Hello and welcome to the base makeup tutorial. Um, I'm just going to run through the very basics of doing your foundation, blush, and contour. Not everybody's looks are going to require blush or contour, but I just wanted to cover all the bases in one concise video. I'm going to also be going over how to use blush, cream blush and contour versus powder blush and contour. So first, we're going to want to moisturize the skin. It's very important, even though some people might skip it, given how much makeup that you're probably going to be wearing every single day, and also the amount of powders that you use. It's just recommended for me to use creams or moisturizers before you start. Keeps your skin happy, and it's much easier to apply makeup on happy skin. Next, I'm going in with a primer. For many, this could also be optional, but I just like to use it. I think it gives a smoother finish to my makeup, but to each their own. I am primarily applying this to my T-zone because I find that's where I usually get the most texture and oil, sweat, all of that jazz. And since this is such an active show, I do emphasize throughout this tutorial to put things on your T-zone, which is across your forehead and across the nose and cheeks. Next, of course, we have foundation and concealer. For the purposes of this show, concealer is not necessary, but if you want to use it on anything like a blemish, a mole, things like that, I personally like to use it around my eyes because I find that's where I need more coverage. And I just blend that out with my fingers, nothing too fancy with that. Next, for my foundations, I actually mix two together to match my skin tone. I recommend to try getting as close as possible to your skin color, especially under the stage lights. If there's something that is not quite matching, it's going to become a little bit more amplified under the lights. Next, I'm applying and blending out my foundation using a wet makeup sponge. You can also use a brush or your fingers, or there's a bunch of other tools, but I personally find that the sponge is the easiest for me. Next, I would recommend blending your foundation down your neck and even slightly on your ears. Since we are going to be under such bright lights, you want to make sure that you kind of blend everything out seamlessly. Next, I'm going to talk about using cream or liquid products versus powder products. On the left side of my face, I'm going to be using liquid, and the right, powder. When using liquid products, you're going to want to do this before you set your face, while your face is still just foundation or concealer. For the bronzer, I'm just going underneath the cheekbones on the hollows of your cheeks and going upwards towards your ear. Next, for liquid blush, I just like to go on the top of the apples of my cheeks. Usually you just find them by smiling and going over the top near to your eyes. For the purposes of this show, I really recommend having a little bit of a heavy hand with blush. Once again, as I mentioned earlier, not every person's going to have blush in their makeup plot, but if you do, don't be afraid of blush. It's not going to look crazy once you're on stage. As I briefly previously mentioned, this is a very active show and you're probably going to get pretty sweaty and oily by intermission, so I recommend pretty heavily powdering, especially on the T-zone of your face. If you're using a powder blush, contour, or bronzer, you're going to be doing that after you set your face with powder. It is pretty much the same when it comes to placement. You're going to go into the hollows of your cheeks underneath your cheekbones when using a bronzer or contour. And when using a blush, you're going to go up on top of the apples of your cheeks. For this show, I would like for everybody to go a little bit up to their temples if you have blush on your makeup plot. A little tip for this show is more is more, especially on the blush. If you are asking yourself, is this enough blush? You can probably add more. This takes us towards the end where you can start doing little last minute touches, setting your face with a little bit more powder, and you're pretty much done. That is your base makeup.